Mistress Willow writes, I've been in a female-led relationship with my husband on and off for a couple of years. At the moment, he has withdrawn his consent. We took off the cage and collar, and we are not in a mistress and boy dynamic. I've suffered from depression and anxiety due to childhood sexual abuse. I built high walls, didn't really show my true self to anyone, and had issues with communication. When my husband and I started out, I was submissive. Over the years, he realized and tried to hint to me that I was really dominant. We dabbled and I tried it a couple of times. I liked it and he wanted to submit only to me. My problem over the years was a lot of lack of self-confidence and non-existent self-esteem. I've always struggled to stand up for myself and speak up. I was a doormat. My hiding past abuse eventually caught up to me and I broke down. We almost divorced, but we reconciled and began to experiment with the DS dynamic again. However, it always seems to be that eventually my depression takes over. I stop taking care of myself and I stop communicating because I am in my head. To me, it feels like I am communicating, but I clearly am not. This is my husband's huge problem, my lack of communication. So after this last bout of me basically abandoning him, he withdrew his consent. This is a huge blow to me as I have recently truly discovered that I am dominant. I'm very sadistic, more than I even imagined, and I need this to balance myself. I feel like an alien is trying to claw itself out of me when I deny this part of myself. My question is, after the hurt and damage I've caused to my husband and submissive, how do I make amends to him? He tells me he is in a boat all by himself, mortally wounded from what I did to him, and I am too busy fixing myself to help him. I don't want to lose my husband or my submissive. I'm back in therapy, started a daily routine to keep myself on a schedule, and went back to the gym. I'm trying to physically do the things to show him I'm trying, but he is looking for what I'm going to do for him specifically. I am at a loss right now. Okay, everyone. Woo, can we just take a moment and give Mistress Willow here just some love and some empathy, because that was super vulnerable, right? So vulnerable. So we honor you. We see you, Mistress Willow, and I've got some questions. I was hoping you would be here so that maybe we could riff a little bit, but I'm still going to ask my questions. If you want to follow up with me in the Ask Miss Elle channel later, feel free to do so. But the first question that I would pose to you, Mistress Willow, is, are you possibly, and this is just a theory, could you be trying to force yourself into a capacity as a dominant that you're not really capable of handling at this particular moment? If you identified as highly sadistic, maybe right now your capacity is for you to be a sadistic top, not necessarily being a present dominant on a 24/7 basis. That might be a way to potentially troubleshoot the issues that you're running into. As you said, toward the end, you've started doing all these things, going back to therapy, and your husband feels like you are too busy fixing yourself to help him. Well, what if that's just the season that you're in? What if there's been enough damage that has been done where we kind of need to put this on the back burner and take DS off of the table for a period of time, for a season, so that you can, Mistress Willow, get more stable. You won't be as triggered by all of these things. Yeah, I'm in agreement with you, MDP, that it very much is, this is your season. It very much sounds like of you doing the inner work for you, the healing work, all of that. So yes, you have to take care of yourself. Absolutely. But Laura is actually kind of jump into another point that I had here, which was, what is so lacking in the communication? Because right now you're saying that your husband views lacking communication as abandonment. So he could be getting triggered. His abandonment wound could be triggered, and it's not actually abandonment. It's hard for me to really dig into this without knowing. So I need some more information there. What is this lacking communication? And is that how he's defining it? Lacking communication equals you have abandoned. And then my follow-up question for that is, what is so lacking in the communication? Is it frequency of communication? Is it vulnerability and transparency? there's a lot to dig into here. So that would be the thing. And I would ask you, Mistress Willow, maybe you and your husband need to sit down and have a very loving negotiation where would he be willing to switch temporarily back into a top space to give you the space and support that you need? Because if you're going to be working on your trauma wounds, if you're going to be working on how to communicate clearly and consistently, that's going to require a lot of vulnerability for you. And if you are leaning more dismissive avoidant, which is what I'm picking up on in your attachment, then the demand for that communication and the demand for that consistently is going to feel highly uncomfortable, likely, and too very, very vulnerable. And typically, those vulnerable feelings parallel very congruently with submission. So that's another concern. If you're trying to be vulnerable and talk about these things, just be vulnerable and share consistently, and it's going to put you in that, oh, I am feeling vulnerable and soft or more submissive space, how are you expected to show up in a dominant space in this season? I feel like it would cause some confusion there potentially. And so that's why I'm kind of bringing all these questions out to you. I would prefer if I could kind of coach with you or your husband or both. But that's why I'm asking these questions. You can get back with me, like I said, excuse me, in the Ask Miss Elle chat. And I'm going to get to a couple points, but my final question is about something that you said toward the end. I don't want to lose my husband or my submissive. And so that's kind of the question for you. Has he threatened that? Has he threatened, if you can't show up and communicate consistently as my dominant, if you can't show up in these ways consistently, then there's a risk of separation, divorce, leave, whatever. Is that being hurled at you? Because that's the thing. What short did I just put out today? I think it was today. What's driving your behavior? And if fear of punishment, fear of divorce, fear of abandonment, whatever is driving your behavior, that path that you're going to take is going to be very, very destructive. Anytime you follow fear down a path, you will follow fear to destruction. You will follow fear to self-sabotage. You will follow fear to missed opportunities. You will follow fear into destruction. So there are two, you guys have likely heard me say this if you've been here for any length of time, there are two routes, two paths to anything in life, love or fear. And so if this is being hurled at you in the marriage that you have to get your shit together and fast or else, yeah, we have to work on self, we have to work on marriage, all of that. So that's something I just want to volley out there. I also, okay, now getting to my points here. I'm glad you are going back to therapy. That's wonderful. There's another free resource here on YouTube. Yes, I'm going to shout her out again. Thais Gibson in the Personal Development School, PDS. Find that channel here on YouTube. And I would highly advise you, Mistress Willow, to look for playlists surrounding dismissive, avoidant attachment styles. It very much seems to be part of what's happening right now. I would also say, if you're going to start trying to be vulnerable and communicate consistently in a way that you haven't before, I would highly advise you to slow down and start tuning into your body. Start tuning into your feelings that are coming up and how they're affecting your body, because that's going to help you communicate what you need to communicate. Okay? So for instance, if this is a new concept for you, one of the things that I worked through in therapy is this response, or this urge to jump in and be responsible. This wound of I am always responsible. I am the responsible one. I'm always responsible. It's a wound that we have processed in therapy. And one of the things that my therapist told me to do was, first of all, we figured out what the feeling was. And I noticed when she was helping me understand how it felt in my body, this pull to be responsible, it literally felt like a weight in my stomach. Like, like a plate weight that you put on like barbells and stuff, like a weight in my stomach attached to like a cord. And it felt every time I had that pull to like jump in and be codependently responsible, it felt like someone was outside of me pulling that weight kind of out of my stomach. And so that became my point of mindfulness, where if I feel that urge, okay, I'm not actually being helpful or secure or healthy, I'm being codependent and triggered. Okay. So that is what I'm talking about. Slow down, stay present, and that can help you communicate what you need to communicate with your husband. But what seems to be happening right now is he wants vulnerability and emotional connection, but you're problem solving in the wrong areas. You're problem solving in the wrong areas. He wants vulnerability and emotional connection. And it sounds like he has an abandonment wound about being dismissed or being ignored or not having consistent communication. And yet you are going, I started a daily schedule. I'm on a routine. I went back to the gym. He's not looking for those from you. So I understand that you're putting forth effort, but you're still putting forth effort. Ooh, you're not going to like this, and I'm so sorry. But you're still putting forth effort in a way that doesn't demand any vulnerability of you. And that's part of the problem. He's wanting emotional connection and vulnerability, and you're trying to problem solve and troubleshoot in a way that still allows you to feel safe and not be vulnerable. That method is not going to fix this. And I'm sorry that I had to just throw it out like that, but that's the reality here. He's looking for something that you're still not giving. So when he says looking for what I'm going to do for him specifically, aka how are you going to heal the damage that has happened between us? And yet you're starting a routine, you're going to the gym, all of these things. It's still self-protection and self-preservation. You're going to have to do things and say things that make you uncomfortable.